So if Juggernaut sends like a 3 power card over into the Space Throne, that's going to be an easy lane for us to take over and win. So it does. It is a Cosmo. So that locks down that location for us. Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So first off, I wanted to say thank you guys for all of the positive feedback on my last video. All of the support has been overwhelmingly positive, and I can't begin to express how much that means. So I just wanted to say thank you guys. So for today's video, we're trying out a new deck. So I got into a tricky spot. I climbed up to rank 104, so I'm past infinite, and I got to a point where when I try out a new deck, I can do well with it for a while, but then it kind of hits a lull. So I'll win a few, I'll lose a few. I stay about the same. I usually push on my cubes overall, so it's been hard to climb consistently. So what I've been wanting to do is try to find decks that don't include Devil Dinosaur. They don't include Nova Carnage. They don't include some of those staples that it has been announced that in 2 weeks there is going to be a balance update. And those cards are on the chopping block for being nerfed, and then some other cards are going to be buffed. So if I can find a deck that navigates well prior to the patch and the update, I think it'll be even stronger once we reach that patch time. So this deck today, the main idea behind it is to control and disrupt the opponent's strategy. So we do that by a couple ways. So we do that by locking down locations. We do that by protecting locations with armor. We do that with Shang-Chi to take out high power minions. We do it with Professor X, completely locking down a lane. Magneto to pull cards into a lane that we want versus where they are. A couple of really cool functions within this deck. So running through the cards that we have really quickly. Sunspot is a really good early drop card, in that if you have a high mana curve and you're going to pass for several turns, it's going to absorb that energy. It becomes competitive with those lanes, even though you're not dropping any cards. So the armor is here to protect our Sunspot and also to stop the opponent from doing their Nova Carnage combos. So if we've limited the number of lanes that the opponent can play, they only have 2, and they've already started playing like a Devil Dinosaur in 1, we know that the armor is going to be useful in the other lane, for the sole purpose that they're not going to want to destroy their Devil Dinosaur. So then it becomes really difficult for them to do the things that they want to do. Next, we have a couple of combos that were in our last video. So we have Lady Sif and Ghost Rider. So this combination feels almost like a staple, like it is designed to be in just about every single deck. You eke out so much value for 5 energy. It just makes sense to put it into a deck, because if you draw this, your chances of winning go up substantially. So ideally you're going to discard Infinite, Magneto, or even still good choices, Captain Marvel or Professor X with Lady Sif. When you replay them with Ghost Rider, it's really hard for the opponent to anticipate, and you can put a lot of value into one lane really quickly. Our Storm Juggernaut combo serves to lock down a location. So ideally you drop Storm on an empty lane. On the next turn you drop Juggernaut, who is going to push anything that they play in that lane off. So it's going to push it into another lane, and then it's going to effectively lock down that lane that turn. So they don't really have an opportunity unless they have move cards to get cards back into that lane. So it makes it really, really difficult for them to secure that lane. And then additionally, some good benefits of having Juggernaut, if there is a location like Murderville, or there's a location like, I can't remember the name, but it's the one where you can only play one card there, or only one card can be added, so you can't even move cards into it. You can push one of their cards with Juggernaut into that lane and steal a whole bunch of value. So if you drop Storm into a Juggernaut and it pushes one of their cards into that lane, all of a sudden they have a 2 or a 3 cost card in that lane and they're stuck. And then additionally, just by pushing them into another lane, you've essentially limited one of the 3 lanes, as well as pushing 2, maybe 3 cards off into the other remaining 2 for the enemy. And they're going to be lower cost cards because you're going to drop this on turn 4. And so that even more so limits the amount of space that they have to play in. Wave is going to serve as a way to sneak out an early Professor X, potentially a Magneto, Captain Marvel, something that is a little bit higher value. We're able to sneak it out early. Shang-Chi is in this deck to compete against decks that are running similar combos to us, so like the Infinite, the Magnetos, the Giganto, or move decks that generally have a lot of high power cards. And then additionally to that, right now our featured location, our hot location, is Muir Island. And what that is going to do is buff every single card that is in that lane by +1 every single turn. So what this causes a lot of people to do is play a lot of minions there early. They buff up to the point where they are 9, 10, 11 power cards. You can drop Shang-Chi, and it's going to usually take out 2, maybe 3 of those cards, and it's going to swing that location for you. Professor X, it serves to completely lock down a lane. So if you can get him out early, or you can find a strategic time to use him, he will lock down a lane and the enemy won't be able to respond. So you can guarantee that you win a lane or potentially lose a lane if you misplay it by having this card. So this card feels really fun. It really locks down certain games and takes the question aspect out of them. Then we have Captain Marvel, which has one of the most unique abilities that I can think of in this game, alongside like Mr. Negative and some cool things like that. So Captain Marvel will, at the end of the game, if possible, after everything resolves, all of the on reveals, the ongoing, after everything resolves, if there is a place where Captain Marvel can move that would win you the game, she'll go there. So it's really fun to drop this on turn 6, knowing that you need to get some additional value in your Storm lane that you flooded. Dropped it on turn 6, you know that it'll switch over to whatever lane it's needed into after everything resolves. It's really fun to see it work. I don't think this card is necessarily overpowered, but I think it is good for this type of deck where we're limiting the space that the opponent has to play in. Next up we have Magneto, which is a new addition to my collection. So Magneto on reveal moves all opposing 3 and 4 cost cards to this location. So we can use this a couple ways. We can use it offensively to pull on a full lane so that it doesn't pull anything over to it. We can also use it defensively to drag high-powered Devil Dinosaurs, drag Enchantresses, Shang-Chi's, Cosmos, some really good, like powerful cards over into our lane. And if we get him out early, we could then follow up with a Shang-Chi in the lane. We could just leave them in purgatory in that lane, knowing that we have a lot of their value there, and it lets us compete for the other lanes pretty effectively. And then finally closing in with Infinite. Infinite is just one of those staple cards. It feels so very strong, especially if you're running a Sunspot. You can pass on turn 5 without necessarily losing as much value, because you'll at least get 5 power into your Sunspot. And then if we're running Lady Sif and Ghost Rider, it just makes sense to have Infinite, because you can sneak him out without having any of the downside of having to pass until turn 6. So this 3-card combo, and with this card as a support, so if you need to play him, manually, you can, just makes you, those 4 cards alone let you compete with the remaining lanes, while the rest of the deck is intended to disrupt and limit what your opponent can do. So I'm really excited to jump into some games. I hope you guys enjoyed them. This deck has felt incredibly consistent for me, even at this higher rank. So I hope that you guys enjoy these. I hope that it is a cool concept for you guys. I haven't really seen this type of deck archetype ran, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Okay, and so first off, we did draw into our Lady Sif, we drew into a Sunspot, and there is a location where cards here can't be destroyed. So I think that's going to be the perfect location for our Sunspot. We don't have to worry about him getting targeted by an Electra, by a Killmonger, by anything else. And so then here we do have the Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo. I do think we play into this combo, because getting a 12 value card is really beneficial. You can sneak out that value pretty easily. I think I'm going to start playing the combo in the sewer system, because we don't necessarily know what this location is. And so that being the vault on turn 6, cards can't be played there. So how do I want to play that? I think on turn 5, depending on what has been dropped, I'm going to go ahead and get our card out, because they're not playing it. They haven't played anything yet. So I do want to get value out onto the board where we can. Especially since we have priority, we don't have to worry about it pulling cards that we don't necessarily want it to over. So they did drop a Devil Dinosaur. Pretty high priority target. They conceded. Okay, so we're going up against Max Drumstick again. I guess they probably didn't have a good draw in the last game, because they did skip the first, 2 turns into just the Devil Dinosaur on 3. We don't have a great draw here. We have a really high mana curve. We don't have any way to really sneak out some of those cards early, or sneak out any of that value early. So looking at Murder World, again, we don't have anything great, but what we want to do is limit the amount of spaces that the opponent can play. They're not going to drop anything into Murder World because they're under the assumption that it would get destroyed at the end of that turn. So that allows us to kind of play into maybe our... No... Yeah, I guess we could. We can play into our wave. If they drop a 3 or a 4, they're not dropping anything. Okay. And so it looks like they have a really good line on this location. I don't think there's going to be much that I can do to win it. I'm not going to be able to destroy any of their cards here. I'm not going to be able to do a lot of the things that we need to do. So what I want to do is kind of try to fill this space up a little bit more. So I'm going to drop the Magneto. It will pull Jubilee over, leaving this kind of as is. But it fills up an extra space in this lane. They dropped a Professor X into our Magneto. We're not able to pull the Jubilee. We win that lane unless they pass. So if they pass enough, then of course we don't. But we drew into our Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo here. We're going to be able to drop Lady Sif. Actually, we can drop Ghost. This is the final turn, so we can drop Lady Sif and Ghost Rider. If they skip this turn to turn this lane, they just have to keep 4 mana, so they can use at most 2. They're not gonna have enough to keep this lane. If they do use more than 2, then we win this lane and this one. So I think we're in a really good spot here. That was a perfect top deck to finish this lane off. So they are skipping. So we're going to win this lane. We're going to win this lane. They will, of course, their Sunspot will buff up and they'll win this far left lane. But overall, not quite enough for them to pull it out. And I bet they're probably pretty mad. I'm going to wait a second before queuing for the next game so that we can go against someone different. Okay, so we're not going against our friend Drumstick this turn. We did get Muir Island, and we also have armor. So that's going to make this a pretty safe lane to let me buff up my cards. And then there is a game, or at turn 7 this game, which if we lock down the other locations, that does work in our favor, because they won't be able to do a whole lot with turn 7, and I'll be able to buff up Sunspot. I'll be able to do a couple of different kind of cool things. So I'm hoping this is like an it's a Bucky Barnes, but they're not going to be able to destroy Bucky because we dropped armor. So we don't really need to use anything here. We could play Juggernaut, which would push the cards they play here into another lane. but I don't think this is necessarily the most beneficial time to use it. I think if we look at like a Storm, or like a Storm into Juggernaut, and potentially even Storm into Juggernaut Professor X, depending on how the lanes play out. With having Elysium, we'll be able to get a lot more cards out onto the board. And so they are running a Cosmo, which we have quite a few pretty powerful on reveal effects. So looking at this lane, is it going to be best to lock down the Limbo location, followed by a wave in the same lane, and then next turn we drop Juggernaut? If it pushes any high power cards off over here, then we may be in trouble. But I think that's how we want to play it. Since we can't play on reveal cards here, it makes it a little difficult to do some of our combos. We could, of course, draw into Magneto to pull Cosmo over, since it is a 3-cost card, but I think the thought process or the better play line is to just try to lock down at least one location, so they have a location locked down. So I think that they're going to want to try to lock down, or at least compete in this lane. So I think they are going to commit some resources, potentially, right? And then we can drop a Magneto, which would be a 12 power swing. That where I'm struggling is if they know they have this one locked down, they're okay with giving this one up. If they play a high power card here on turn 5 and turn 6, we may be in trouble. And that's what they're doing. So the Enchantress, which is going to block our armor buff. But you wouldn't want to destroy Bucky Barnes at this point, I wouldn't think. So we have priority. Oh, they have a Shang-Chi, don't they? I think that's what they have. Nope, I guess not. So had they had a Shang-Chi, the Enchantress would have made a lot of sense, because then they'd be able to destroy my Sunspot. They'd also be able to destroy whatever other big, powerful card I dropped there, which was going to be the Magneto. And that would have left us with 7-11, which wouldn't have been able to compete with them. But I'm guessing they didn't have Shang-Chi, so they already had a couple of disruptors. It wouldn't surprise me if they weren't running that card as well. Usually what I see is people either run Enchantress or Shang-Chi, because it's hard to play both efficiently. Okay, so we have our Lady Sif, we have Storm, we have Shang-Chi, Magneto. So we have some pretty good power cards, pretty good value cards. We just have to finish off some of the combo draws to be able to utilize them. And so we have the Lady Sif. Depending on what they play this turn, I think I will likely drop a Storm on one of the locations next turn and follow that up with a Juggernaut. So seeing only one card can be played here, I do like that. So the Space Throne, we have an opportunity to sneak a card over in that direction. So if they drop 2 lower cost cards, what we'll be able to do, and I think most likely they'll try to do that so that they can win this lane. What we'll be able to do with that is lock down this lane. So I'm gonna snap. This could go either way. We have a pretty good coin flip, I think. So if Juggernaut sends like a 3 power card over into the Space Throne, that's going to be an easy lane for us to take over and win. So it does. It is a Cosmo. So that locks down that location for us. And then the flooding lane is now locked down as well. They of course can get some buff with Bishop, but I think overall it's going to make it really difficult for them to win. So unrevealabilities won't happen. So how do we want to play this now? If we lock down this left lane, the only way that they will be able to win is if they get some kind of additional buff onto this flooded plane. We will need to top deck into like a Captain Marvel or a Magneto to win this way. So I changed my mind. If they drop 2 cards this turn, it wouldn't have been worth it, but okay. So we now have our Sunspot, which takes over that right lane. All they're going to be able to do is push in that middle lane. And we'll be able to win the middle lane. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop Captain Marvel, which is a pretty cool, unique card, being that after the game is done, after everything has resolved, all the effects, all the on reveals, the ongoing, if it can move to a location that would win me the game, it will. And so I think very, very likely what it's going to end up doing is right now we're pushed in this lane, but it's not cards can't be added, it's cards can't be played here. So once everything's resolved, we will likely lose this lane because they have the Chavez. We push this lane. Captain Marvel is going to move over into this middle direction, or this middle lane, because that location wins us the game. I think Captain Marvel is such a unique card. I don't know that she's like super overpowered. I don't know that. I think she's fairly well balanced, but it is just so satisfying to be able to play a card that otherwise, to play a movement card, you would have to either have a combo or drop it ahead of time. That way the next turn you can move it. Captain Marvel you can drop on your final turn and it will do that for you. Wow. So overall that last win was really, really satisfying. It felt really solid. We were able to really stop. It felt like stop a lot of what the opponent wanted to do. So at the start of this game, armor was discarded from Sokovia. So what we're gonna do is we're still gonna play into our Lady Sif because we did draw the Ghost Rider portion of the combo, and we're just going to hope. We're just gonna hope that the right card comes out from that location. So I don't necessarily know that I need to drop Ghost Rider here. So we have Magneto that could potentially come from using Ghost Rider, but we also have armor. So do we want to do the coin flip? So I think we don't. I think we go with disrupting this lane. I think a turn 7 is okay. If we lock down enough of the lanes, they won't really have much room to play anyways, so we'll have an extra turn to either let our Sunspot buff up or to manually play the Infinite. I think it'll be beneficial. So they're running a vulture. It's interesting. So if they move it over into the middle lane, that will win that lane for them. So I think I want to lock down this flooded lane as much as possible. So I'm going to drop the Ghost Rider. We're going to see what card comes out of that coin flip. If it's armor, little unfortunate. But if it is the Infinite, that will move Vulture over. That'll move Bishop over. They may actually win that lane because of it. So it does draw the Magneto, and I didn't think about the potential move that would come with that. Okay, so they did Hulkbuster their armor. It's a super, like, weirdly pieced together deck. So, we don't have a way to destroy the armor, which is okay. Unless they drop a lot of cards, because they need a 5 power swing. Unless they drop a lot of cards, they're not going to be able to take this location. That would pretty much take over the rest of their play space. So I'm going to go with just skipping on my turn 6, let Sunspot buff up, and then we will follow that up with an Infinite. So what I am battling with right now is where we place the Infinite. So if we place the Infinite in the middle lane, that makes it a really solid lane. But if we think he's going to be able to drop 3, maybe 4 cards this turn, so how many cards does he have in hand? He has 3. If we think he's going to be able to drop all of those cards, then it makes sense to try to... So at most, unless he moves this out, he ties this lane. Or he ties this lane. Okay. So move all cards to the left with Heimdall, right? Is that kind of the loose combo that he's going with? So he'd be able to move armor over to the left. He'd be able to move multiple man and Enchantress over to the left. He will take this lane. And so we do need our resources spread. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a Heimdall. Okay, perfect. I think we still win. He will, of course, take the left lane. But I think we have enough value in the right, or in the middle and the right lane, because we spread it across, that he's not going to be able to get his combo off. Okay, so kind of like it seemed like a hybrid move deck. So it didn't seem like it was entirely focused on movement, but it seemed like it had some of the cards that benefit from movement. So it did have Hulkbuster, it did have multiple man, it had Vulture, and then it had other cards which I haven't seen ran in a movement deck. But luckily we were able to snag that victory and pull it out. So I think that is where I'm going to end the video for today. Overall, this deck list feels really, really solid. With all of the other deck lists that I've been running, like I said, I'll win several in a row, and then it just like I hit a wall. But I haven't found that wall for this deck. So this has a lot of kind of counterplay and locking down the locations that your opponent can play on, and you having some abilities to either move a card into that via Captain Marvel, fully lock a location down with Professor X, or a few similar cards like that. Just make this deck feel really, really solid, and it's really fun to kind of play and disrupt what the opponent wants to do and what they're trying to do. But overall, I think this deck is a pretty solid choice right now, especially if you're climbing in some of the lower meta, where you may not be going against the decks that are reaching pool 3. It becomes difficult when you're going against pool 3 cards, just because they're so hard to anticipate. But overall, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I will be continuing to unlock cards doing some additional deck videos, and then we do have a patch that is coming in 2 weeks that I'll want to cover. So we're gonna have some nerfs, which looks like it's gonna be probably Nova, maybe Moon Girl, Devil Dino, maybe Collector. We have some buffs or some nerfs coming in. They also said that they're going to be buffing some of the movement cards. So I think a move deck may become viable, at which point I think it'd be really fun to kind of try out. And we'll have to make sure we work around a Shang-Chi and don't get caught with 40 power in a lane that can all be targeted by Shang-Chi. So overall, I think some really exciting things coming up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.